Hello everyone, and welcome back to our English lesson. I'm Emma, and as always, I'm here with my wonderful co-teacher, Jake. How are you today, Jake?
Hi Emma. Hi everyone. I'm doing great, but I have to admit, I was just daydreaming before the lesson started. I was imagining what my life would be like if I were a famous rock star.
Oh, how funny. Actually, that's perfect, because today's lesson is all about imagining situations that aren't real. We're going to learn the second conditional.
The second conditional. This is one of my favorite grammar topics because it lets you dream big. You can talk about anything you wish were true, even if it's impossible.
Exactly. So if you've ever thought, I wish I could fly, or I wish I lived by the sea, this lesson will help you express those ideas naturally in English.
Let's get started, Emma. Show us how it works.
Right. The structure is simple. We use if plus the past simple, then a comma, then would plus the base verb. For example, if I had money, I would travel.
But wait, Emma, I'm confused. Why do we use the past tense if we're talking about now?
Great question. The past form here doesn't mean past time. It signals that the situation is unreal or imaginary. It's a hypothetical situation.
Ah, I see. So when I say, if I had $1 million, I don't actually have it. It's just a dream, a hypothetical idea.
Precisely. And in the second part, we use would to describe the imaginary result. If I had £1 million, I would buy a house in the countryside.
Nice. And we usually shorten I would to I'd in conversation, right? So you'd say, I'd buy a house.
Yes, that's much more natural. Listen carefully. I'd buy, you'd buy, he'd buy, she'd buy, we'd buy, they'd buy. The contraction sounds smoother.
One more thing. With the verb be, we often say were for all subjects in these sentences. Like, if I were rich, not, if I was rich.
Yes, especially in formal English. If I were you, I'd take the job. Both was and were are heard, but were is the traditional form.
Okay, I think we're ready for a real conversation. Let's see this in action.
So Jake, suppose you won the lottery tomorrow. What would you do with the money?
Oh, that's a fun question to imagine. If I won the lottery, I'd quit my job immediately. Well, maybe not this one. I love teaching with you.
How sweet of you. But seriously, what's your dream? Where would you go?
If I had unlimited money, I would travel around the world for a year. I'd visit Japan, New Zealand, and Iceland. What about you, Emma?
Let me think. If I had that kind of freedom, I'd buy a small cottage by the sea. I wish I lived somewhere quieter.
That sounds peaceful. Suppose you could live anywhere in the world. Just imagine it for a moment. Where would you choose?
Probably Cornwall, in the south of England. If I lived there, I would walk on the beach every morning.
Beautiful. And if I will live there too, we could have coffee together.
Careful, Jake. You said, if I will live. Remember, after if, in the second conditional, we don't use will. We use the past simple.
Oops, you're right. Let me try again. If I lived there too, we could have coffee together.
Perfect. That's the correct form. Let me explain why Jake's mistake is so common. Many learners want to use will after if because they're talking about the future.
Right, but the second conditional isn't really about the future. It's about an unreal situation in the present, even if we sometimes imagine it happening tomorrow.
Exactly. So we say, if I knew the answer, I'd tell you. Not, if I will know. The if part always uses past simple.
And would goes in the result clause. If I had time, I would help you. If I spoke Italian, I would move to Rome.
Notice that we can also flip the order. We can say, I would move to Rome if I spoke Italian. Same meaning, no comma needed in the middle.
And instead of would, we can use could or might for different meanings. If I had wings, I could fly. If I knew her number, I might call her.
Could suggests ability, and might suggests possibility. Both work beautifully in hypothetical sentences.
Let me suppose another example. If I were a bird, I would fly to the top of a mountain.
Lovely. And notice you said, if I were, not if I was. Excellent.
Okay, Emma, let's have another conversation, but this time about your secret wishes.
Oh, all right. Ask me anything.
If you could meet any famous person, alive or from history, who would you choose?
What a wonderful hypothetical question. I think if I could meet anyone, I'd choose Jane Austen. I wish I could ask her about her writing process.
Imagine that conversation. What would you ask her first?
If I sat down with Jane Austen, I would ask her if she ever dreamed her books would be famous 200 years later.
That's a beautiful dream. My turn?
Yes, your turn. Suppose you could change one thing about the world. What would it be?
Big question. If I could change one thing, I'd make sure every child had access to good education. I imagine a world where everyone has that chance.
That's a beautiful answer, Jake. And what would you do if you weren't a teacher?
If I wasn't a teacher, I think I would be a chef. I love cooking. Or maybe a travel writer. I dream about that sometimes.
A travel writer. That suits you. And listen everyone, Jake said, if I wasn't. That's also acceptable in everyday speech, though, if I weren't, is more traditional.
Right, both are common. Now Emma, one more. If you had 3 wishes from a magic lamp, what would they be?
Oh goodness. First, I wish I could speak every language. Second, if I had the power, I would end world hunger. And third, suppose I could fly, that would be magical.
3 perfect wishes.
Now let's look at our key vocabulary words from today. The first one is wish. We use it to talk about something we want but don't have.
I wish I had more free time. I wish my apartment were bigger. I wish I could play the guitar.
Notice how wish often goes with these unreal situations, just like the second conditional. Next is imagine. This means to picture something in your mind.
Imagine you're on a beach. Imagine the sound of the waves. Can you imagine living without your phone?
Wonderful examples. Then we have suppose. This is similar to imagine, often used to introduce a hypothetical idea.
Suppose you found a wallet on the street. Suppose your boss called you tonight. Suppose we missed our flight, what would we do?
Excellent. Next, the word hypothetical. This is an adjective meaning imaginary or based on a possible situation, not a real one.
It's just a hypothetical question. This is a hypothetical scenario. Don't worry, the situation is purely hypothetical.
Lovely. And finally, dream. This can be a noun or a verb. It means a wish or goal, or to imagine something during sleep.
My dream is to write a novel. I dream of visiting Paris. She has always dreamed of becoming a doctor.
Beautiful. So we have wish, imagine, suppose, hypothetical, and dream. All 5 words help us talk about things that aren't real but live in our minds. Let's do a quick review. The second conditional structure is if plus past simple, then would plus base verb. We use it for unreal present situations.
And remember, we never use will in the if part. We use the past simple even though we're talking about now or the future.
With be, we often say were for all subjects. If I were you, and we can use could or might instead of would for variety.
Try making your own sentences. If you had a free afternoon, what would you do? If you could change one thing about your life, what would it be?
Pause the video and try saying 3 sentences out loud. Use wish, imagine, or suppose. Don't worry about being perfect. Just play with the language.
And remember, this is all hypothetical. There's no pressure. Dream big, imagine freely.
Wonderful work today, everyone. You've learned how to express imaginary situations using the second conditional. That's a huge step in your English.
In our next lesson, B1 number 4, we'll move on to the third conditional. That's for unreal situations in the past, like, if I had studied harder, I would have passed the exam.
It builds directly on what you learned today, so make sure to practice the second conditional this week. Talk to yourself, write sentences, dream in English.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the lesson, give it a like and subscribe for more. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye everyone, and keep imagining wonderful things in English. Take care.